Human shielded an alien girl from the falling debris. Her quiet bow afterward meant everything. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's return to our main character. The metal walkway shuddered under Ethan Hale's boots as he jogged across the upper maintenance deck of Outpost 9. The lights flickered overhead, thin tubes of white trembling as if afraid of what the structure was about to do next. A low groan rolled through the steel frame, a sound like a warning exhale from something ancient and massive buried in the walls. Dust drifted from the ceiling, catching in the flickering glow. Ethan wiped his forehead with the back of his sleeve, tasting the familiar grit of iron and machine oil on the air. His breath steamed faintly in the cool corridor, the outpost's faltering climate systems working overtime. The control tablet in his hand buzzed, throwing out another alert. Structural strain, upper deck, section C. Again, he muttered under his breath as he tightened his grip and kept moving. This place was old, patched together from scavenged modules and forgotten military scraps. Nights like this, the whole station felt like it balanced on a tired shrug. A distant thump vibrated through the metal railing at his side, followed by the sharp pop of a failing support beam somewhere above. Ethan slowed, listening. The outpost held its breath. And then the sound came, a sharp, splintering crack racing overhead. He looked up just in time to see the ceiling plates bow. A panel tore loose. Something bright, sparking wiring, flared behind it. That was when he heard the gasp. A small sound, barely there, carried by the echoing corridor. Ethan snapped his head left. Not 20 feet away, a girl stood frozen near a cargo pallet. Thin, graceful, with skin the soft lavender of dusk. She wore a slim silver chest plate shaped to her frame, the kind used by visiting diplomatic trainees. Her eyes, gold like polished amber, were wide and fixed on the collapsing metal above her. The whole section gave way. Ethan didn't think. His body moved before thought arrived. He sprinted, boots slamming against the trembling floor as the plates overhead cascaded downward. The air filled with the sharp hiss of torn wiring and the dull thunder of falling debris. He reached her just as the largest section broke free. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close, turning his back to the drop instinctively. A heavy impact struck the ground behind him, a shockwave shivering through his boots. More pieces skidded across the floor, scattering harmlessly around them. When the noise settled, all he heard was the soft, shaken breath of the girl in his arms. Ethan loosened his hold, stepping back just enough to see her face. She stared up at him, stunned, her eyes moving slowly as if cataloging a moment she didn't understand. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Human, why did you do that?" He didn't have a good answer, so he gave the only one he had. "You were in danger." She blinked once, the golden irises shifting, reflecting the dim lights. Her hands trembled slightly before she drew them together at her chest. She lowered her head. Not a simple nod, not fear, something deeper, quieter. A gesture weighted with meaning he didn't yet know. And in that still corridor, with dust settling like snow around them, Ethan felt that small silent bow carry more gravity than the falling metal ever had. The dust still drifted around Ethan Hale like slow, weightless ash, catching the thin emergency lights, as if the corridor itself was exhaling after holding too much tension. The lavender-skinned girl stood very still, her hands pressed together at her chest, her head lowered in that quiet gesture she had given him. Ethan felt a subtle warmth of embarrassment rise to his ears. He shifted his stance, brushing grit off his sleeve. "You do not need to bow," he said softly. She lifted her head just a little, her golden eyes steady but uncertain. "It is not a bow," she replied. Her voice carried a gentle resonance, almost musical, but careful. "It is a mark of acknowledgement. You placed yourself between danger and me." Ethan let out a low breath, glancing up at the bent ceiling panels. The structure still groaned faintly, as if unhappy with its own weight. He tapped his control tablet. Half the readings were blank. The rest flickered in and out. "This whole deck is unstable," he murmured. "We need to move before it decides to finish falling apart." The girl nodded once, a small, composed motion. Ethan offered his hand without thinking, then froze, unsure if her culture allowed that kind of gesture. To his surprise, she placed her palm lightly against his. Her skin was cool, almost like the surface of polished stone warmed by sunlight. They began walking slowly down the corridor, Ethan guiding her around scattered pieces of loose metal. The overhead lights buzzed, then dimmed again. "I am Saria," she said quietly as they moved. "I was told this outpost was safe to observe." Ethan gave a thin, apologetic smile. "Safe most days. Tonight is not one of those days." Her gaze drifted over the trembling walls, her brow furrowing with a soft crease. "Humans build with speed," she said, not unkindly, but sometimes without listening to what the metal wishes to hold. Ethan huffed a small laugh. "Pretty much. These supports were welded in a rush years before I got here. I have been trying to reinforce them, but the outpost is old. It is like patching a winter coat full of holes." Saria studied him with a thoughtful tilt of her head. "You know this place well? You move through it like someone who carries its weight." Ethan shrugged. "Someone has to keep things from falling on people." She lowered her eyes again, not a bow, but something close to it. A moment later, another soft tremor ran beneath their feet. Dust fluttered from the ceiling. Ethan steadied her instinctively, one hand lightly on her upper arm. She did not pull away. Instead, she watched him with a look he could not quite place, a mix of curiosity and something like respect. "You reacted without hesitation," she said. "Most individuals wait for certainty. You did not." "There was no time to think," Ethan answered. "Thinking gets people hurt in moments like that." She seemed to consider this deeply, as if turning the thought in her mind. Ahead, the corridor opened to a wider junction. A cracked viewport showed the night side of the planet beyond, an expanse of deep indigo lit by the faint glimmer of distant mining flares. Saria paused beside the glass, her reflection merging with the stars outside. "In my culture," she said softly, "to shield another with your own body is an honor chosen only for family or oath bond." Ethan looked at her, unsure how to respond to words that carried so much weight. "I did not know any of that," he said. "I just saw someone who needed help." She turned to him, golden eyes warmed by something subtle and sincere. "That," she whispered, "is why the meaning remains." Another tremor shivered through the deck, gentler this time, but insistent. Ethan glanced at the readout on his tablet. "We should get you to the lower level," he said. "It is more stable down there." Saria inclined her head, a calm acknowledgement. "Lead the way, Ethan Hale." And as they continued forward, the dim lights trailing behind them like fading lanterns, he could not shake the feeling that something in that quiet corridor had shifted, something fragile and important and not entirely explained yet. The lower junction corridor opened into a wider passage where the lights steadied into a soft, humming glow, and for a moment Ethan Hale felt the tension in the outpost ease just enough for him to breathe normally again. Saria walked beside him with light, precise steps, her silver chest plate catching thin reflections from the overhead lamps. The faint tremor under their feet reminded him that the outpost was not done testing their luck. He checked his control tablet again, tapping the corner with his thumb to coax the sluggish readings forward. The structural map blinked twice before settling into a dull orange. "The lower level should be just a minute ahead," he said. "Most of the supports down there are reinforced." Saria studied the shifting display with quiet focus. "You trust this tool to guide you?" Ethan exhaled through his nose. "Trust is a strong word. I would say I negotiate with it." She made a soft sound in her throat that might have been amusement. As they moved, the corridor's temperature shifted slightly, a warmer current drifting from the ventilation grates. The change made the air feel gentler, like the station was calming itself after a long shudder. Saria slowed near an access ladder, placing her hand lightly against the cool metal rail. "Your outpost feels alive," she murmured, "as if it resists its own collapse." Ethan glanced at her, surprised. "That is one way to put it. I usually say it is stubborn." Saria traced the rail with her fingertips, the faint lavender glow of her skin reflecting off the brushed steel. "Stubbornness," she said softly, "is simply another form of endurance." Ethan opened his mouth to reply, but a soft chime pinged from the wall panel to their right. He stepped closer, brushing dust off the small monitor. The screen flickered, showing a live feed from the observation deck above. A loose pallet of equipment had tipped over during the earlier tremor. Nothing dangerous now, but the image reminded him of how close the ceiling had come to giving out entirely. He felt a small knot tighten in his chest. Saria watched him, her golden eyes narrowing with quiet awareness. "You are troubled," she said. Ethan gave a small shrug. "I have seen this place strain before. But tonight was different." She waited, giving him room to continue if he wished. He did not speak about himself often, but something about her calm presence made honesty come easier. "I heard someone in trouble," he said, "and I hoped I would not be too late." Saria held his gaze, her expression unreadable yet gentle. "You were not too late," she said, "and your choice was made before you understood who I was." Ethan looked away, feeling the warmth of her words settle quietly into him. "I would have done the same for anyone." "I know," she murmured. They resumed walking toward the lift alcove at the end of the corridor. The control panel beside it flickered but responded when Ethan pressed the call button. A soft hum vibrated through the floor as the lift ascended from below. Saria stood close, her presence steady, her posture straight with the quiet confidence of someone raised in a disciplined culture. The lights dimmed briefly, then returned to normal. She tilted her head, studying him again. "You act with instinct," she said. "It is unfamiliar to me." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Unfamiliar how?" "In my society, decisions are weighed with intention," she replied. "Every movement carries meaning. Every choice is measured." She hesitated, her voice lowering. "You moved without measure." He chuckled softly. "Most people would call that not thinking things through. I call it something else," she said. The lift doors opened with a gentle chime, warm air rising from the reinforced lower deck. Ethan gestured for her to enter first. She stepped inside, turning to face him with a composed, almost serene expression. "Ethan Hale," she said, "you changed the outcome of my day by simply being who you are." He felt the words land with surprising weight. As the door slid closed and the lift descended, a soft quiet filled the space between them, and for the first time since the outpost began shaking itself apart, the silence felt safe. The lift settled with a soft jolt, and the door slid open to the lower deck where the lighting was warmer and steadier, the hum of the reinforced generators creating a gentle background vibration. Ethan Hale stepped out first, scanning the corridor with a habit born from years of listening to the outpost's moods. The air smelled faintly of warm circuitry and recycled oxygen, calmer than the tense upper levels. Saria followed, her steps light and measured, her golden eyes taking in the sturdier beams and wider support columns. "This level is different," she observed. "It feels grounded." Ethan nodded. "It is the safest place on the outpost. If anything shakes loose up there, this area is built to handle it." She touched one of the thick support columns with the back of her fingers, the lavender glow of her skin brushing the cool metal. "You reinforced these yourself," she said, not as a question but as an understanding. "Mostly," he admitted. "I had help for the heavier sections, but I worked down here often." Saria stepped closer to examine a weld line running along the beam. "Your work is careful," she said. "Precise. It holds meaning." Ethan blinked, feeling a hint of warmth rise at the unexpected compliment. "It just has to be reliable. People walk through here. That is meaning enough for me." She regarded him with a thoughtful calm, her posture steady. "On my world, the one who safeguards the structure is honored. They are considered keepers of life, even if their hands never touch a weapon." Ethan looked down at his calloused palms, a little surprised. "Here, most people never even notice the welds unless they break." "Then they have not learned to see," she replied softly. They walked deeper into the deck, passing a row of storage crates. A small vibration rippled through the floor, far gentler than the earlier shocks. Ethan paused, feeling it through his boots. "Just a settling shift," he said. "The upper deck is releasing pressure." Saria watched the ceiling for a long moment, as if listening to something beyond human hearing. "You understand this place the way a navigator understands a star map," she said. "You read its signals." "Or I have been here too long," he answered with a small smile. "This outpost, and I have an agreement. I keep it patched, and it does not fall apart on me." She considered that with quiet amusement. "You speak as if the structure has a spirit." Ethan shrugged lightly. "When you spend enough nights fixing the same old systems, everything starts to feel like it has a personality." Saria stepped in front of him, her eyes steady on his. Earlier, when you shielded me, you reacted with the same certainty you show this place. You moved to protect without stopping to weigh your own risk. That is not ordinary. Ethan looked away for a moment, adjusting the strap of his tool belt. I did what anyone would have done. No, she said gently. Not anyone. Her voice held no judgment, only a quiet truth. Ethan exhaled slowly. You were in front of me. That was enough. Saria's expression softened, a subtle shift of her features that carried more meaning than words. She reached out, lightly touching the reinforced beam beside them. Then allow me to return the steadiness you offered me, she said. I will walk beside you until we are both certain this place is safe again. Ethan met her gaze, and for a moment the hum of the deck felt like a heartbeat shared between them. They moved forward together, two figures in the steadier glow of the lower level, the outpost settling around them like a tired old friend learning, once again, to trust its own strength. The corridor narrowed as Ethan Hale guided Saria toward the diagnostics bay, a room tucked into the lower deck where the outpost stored its more delicate instruments. The lights here were softer, casting long horizontal reflections across the polished floor panels. The hum of the stabilizers vibrated lightly through the soles of their boots, steady and calm, like the slow breathing of something finally at rest. Ethan tapped the wall console, bringing up a series of readings. The display flickered once, then resolved into a clear layout of the outpost's condition. The upper levels are still shifting, he said, studying the colored graphs. Nothing critical, but we need to make sure the disturbances were not caused by something deeper. Saria moved closer, her golden eyes scanning the map with a focused stillness. This station bends like a tree root in shifting soil, she murmured. Flexible enough to survive small storms, but not designed for prolonged strain. Ethan glanced at her with a faint smile. You speak about structures like someone who has lived inside many of them. She touched the edge of the display gently. On my world, architecture is shaped around harmony. Buildings are grown, not built. They flex with the environment. We listen to what the materials wish to become. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You grow buildings? She nodded with a serene calm. They take years to mature, but once grown, they breathe with the wind. Ethan let out a quiet laugh of disbelief. You would hate this place then. It barely keeps its own screws in order. Saria turned to him, her expression soft but earnest. I do not hate it. It has heart. And it has you. His breath caught for a brief second. He looked away, pretending to adjust the panel brightness. It is just a job, he said. I repair things. No, she replied gently. You preserve what others depend on. The quiet sincerity in her voice settled through him like warm air. A faint tremor rippled through the floor, not dangerous, but noticeable enough to draw both their eyes upward. Ethan checked the time on the display. We should run a manual inspection along the lower framework, he said. If something shifted in the support lattice, we will feel it down here first. Saria stepped beside him, her posture straightening with purpose. Then I will help you. Ethan blinked. Are you sure? These inspections can take hours. Time is not a burden, she said. Not when the purpose is clear. He handed her a small handheld scanner, the metal surface reflecting a faint hint of her lavender glow. She accepted it with both hands, almost ceremonially. They moved deeper into the support corridor, where the beams rose overhead like a forest of metal, each one carrying decades of strain and patchwork history. Ethan showed her how to hold the scanner to the joints, how to listen for the soft shift in the tone of the device. To his surprise, she learned quickly, her movements precise and attentive. Occasionally she paused, placing her ear near a beam, interpreting sounds he could barely detect. Your structure speaks in vibrations, she said. It tells you when it is weary. Ethan nodded slowly. I guess I have learned to hear it too. They worked side by side beneath the warm lights, the scanner's soft beeps echoing gently through the corridor. The outpost had grown quiet around them, as if resting after the chaos above. Saria looked at Ethan, her voice lowered. You listened to me when I was uncertain. Now let me listen to this place with you. And as they continued along the steady metal path, Ethan felt something shift in the air, a subtle connection forming not from fear or urgency, but from shared calm, shared purpose, and the growing trust between a human who repaired old structures and an alien girl who understood how even the strongest walls sometimes needed someone to stand with them. They moved along the support corridor with slow, steady steps, the soft beeps of the handheld scanner echoing like distant birds in a metal canyon. Ethan Hale paused beside one of the thicker beams, resting his hand against the cool surface as if checking the outpost's pulse. The vibrations running through it were faint, gentle, almost sleepy. He nodded to himself. This section looks stable, he said. If anything shifted, it was higher up. Saria ran her scanner along the joint, listening with her eyes half closed. The device responded with a clean, even tone. She touched the metal lightly with her fingertips. It feels settled, she agreed. Like it has accepted the strain. Ethan looked at her with mild curiosity. Do you really sense it? Or is that just something your people say? I sense it, she said simply. The structure hums differently when it is uneasy. He chuckled under his breath. I thought I was the only one who talked about this place like it was alive. She met his eyes, her expression calm and sincere. It is not alive, she said, but it holds life. That alone gives it a kind of spirit. Ethan blinked, surprised by how much that resonated. They continued onward, passing under a row of overhead conduits that hummed with the soft warmth of power. A single strip of light flickered gently as they walked beneath it, like a tired eyelid fighting to stay open. Ethan reached up and tapped it twice. The flicker steadied. You communicate with it, Saria observed. Ethan shrugged. Sometimes a gentle tap works better than a full reset. On my world, we whisper to living structures, she said. We ask them to hold firm during storms. He gave her a faint grin. I doubt metal listens that well, but I guess we both try. They reached a small junction where the floor panels were slightly raised, a subtle sign of pressure shifting within the frame. Ethan crouched down, running his fingers along the seam. It pushed upward earlier, he said. It is evening out now. Saria knelt beside him, her movements graceful and deliberate. Your instincts are strong, she said. You read this place through your hands. Ethan sat back on his heels, letting out a thoughtful breath. I just know it well. This station and I have been through a lot. You speak about it with loyalty, she said. Loyalty is rare. Her words hung in the air for a moment, quiet and gentle. Ethan stood and stretched his back, brushing dust from his palms. Come on, he said. There is one more section I want to check, then we can get you back to the visitor quarters. Instead of standing immediately, Saria remained kneeling for a moment longer, looking at him with an expression Ethan could not quite decipher. Finally she rose, her posture steady and composed. You protect this place the way you protected me, she said quietly. Without hesitation. Without waiting for permission. Ethan shook his head with a soft, almost embarrassed laugh. It is not the same. To me, it is, she replied. They resumed walking, the metal walkway humming faintly beneath their steps. Saria watched the path ahead, then spoke again, her voice barely above the hum of the corridor. Earlier, when the ceiling fell, you did not look afraid, she said. You only looked certain. Ethan thought about that for a long second. Sometimes certainty comes from not having time to feel anything else. Saria's eyes softened. In my culture, certainty is considered a gift. But I do not believe you learned it from training or tradition. Ethan looked at her. What do you believe then? She held his gaze with calm conviction. I believe it comes from your heart, she said. And hearts cannot be taught. The scanner beeped softly in Saria's hand, echoing through the quiet corridor as they walked side by side, the outpost settling deeper into a rare moment of peace around them. The last section of the support corridor opened into a small maintenance chamber where the ceiling curved lower and the lights glowed in a warm amber tone, steady and calm. Ethan Hale stepped inside first, feeling the shift in temperature as a soft wave of heat brushed across his face. The generators beneath this room always ran warmer, and the hum rising from the floor carried a deep, even rhythm. Saria followed, holding the scanner with both hands, her movements quiet and attentive. This chamber feels different, she said softly. Heavier, like the weight of the entire outpost settles here. Ethan nodded. This is where the lower framework meets the central spine. If something goes wrong anywhere above, this room usually knows first. He moved toward the main support column, a thick beam of reinforced alloy rising through the center of the chamber. He pressed his palm against it, feeling the faint, slow vibration. It pulsed like a heartbeat under layers of metal and age. "It is steady," he said, "but I want to check the tension locks, just in case." Saria stood beside him, listening with her eyes half narrowed, as if absorbing the resonance through more than just sound. "It hums with certainty," she whispered. "This structure trusts your hands." Ethan smiled at that, a quiet, almost shy smile. "I do what I can." Saria crouched near the base of the column, placing her scanner against a lower joint. The device responded with a clear tone, echoing softly in the warm chamber. "No fractures," she reported. "The alignment is true." Ethan knelt beside her, examining the readings on the screen. "Good. That means the earlier shift was probably just surface strain from the upper deck." They both rose slowly, the low lights casting long shadows behind them. A faint creak rolled through the chamber, distant, gentle, nothing alarming, but enough for Ethan to tilt his head, listening. Saria watched him closely. "You heard something," she said. A whisper in the structure. Ethan tapped the side of the support column lightly. The vibration steadied. Just the deck settling. "It does that when the temperature changes." Saria stepped closer, her lavender glow catching across the metal like faint moonlight. "You respond to this place with care," she said. "Even small sounds call to you." Ethan shrugged softly. "If you want something to stay standing, you pay attention to the small things. The small things warn you before the big things ever happen." She considered this, her expression thoughtful and calm. "On my world," she said, "we believe the small moments reveal the truth of a person more than the grand ones." Ethan looked at her, curious. "Is that why you bowed earlier?" Saria paused, her golden eyes lowering for a brief second, as if recalling the moment with a quiet weight. "I bowed because you moved without fear," she said. "But that was not the true reason. The true reason came after." Ethan waited, his breath held in a stillness that matched the hum of the chamber. Saria lifted her gaze to his. "You treated me not as a guest, not as a responsibility, but as someone whose safety mattered to you. That is rare. Even among my own people, such protection is not given lightly." Ethan looked away, feeling the warmth rise in his chest. "I did not think about any of that," he said. "I just saw someone who needed help." Saria stepped closer, her voice soft but clear. "That is why it mattered." A soft, unexpected tremor rippled through the floor, gentle, harmless, but enough to bring their attention upward. Ethan's hand went instinctively to the nearest support beam. Saria took a calm breath, steadying her stance. The tremor faded as quickly as it came, leaving only the warm hum behind. Ethan exhaled slowly. "It is nothing," he said. "Just the upper deck shifting weight." Saria looked at him, her expression firm and resolute. "If something happens," she said quietly, "I will stand with you." Ethan met her eyes, the amber lights reflecting in the gold of her irises. "You do not have to," he said. Saria's voice carried no hesitation. "I choose to." And in that small chamber, wrapped in the gentle warmth of the outpost's beating heart, Ethan realized that the outpost was not the only thing learning to trust its own strength. The warm hum of the maintenance chamber settled into a steady rhythm as Ethan Hale and Saria made their way back toward the corridor, their steps slow and deliberate, as if neither of them wished to disturb the fragile calm the outpost had finally accepted. The air held a gentle heat rising from the generators. Below, brushing against their faces like a quiet reassurance. Saria walked slightly behind him, her golden eyes tracing the arcs of light across the reinforced walls. "This place feels calmer," she said softly, "as if it knows the danger has passed." Ethan glanced back at her. "It is holding steady. That is all I could ask for tonight." They reached the wider junction where the corridor opened into a long walkway lined with low support girders. Ethan paused, checking the structural readings on his tablet. The graph had settled into a smooth pattern, no longer spiking with warning tones. "Everything looks good," he said. "We should get you to your quarters before the night cycle kicks in." Saria stepped closer, her expression thoughtful. "You speak as if this cycle follows your command." Ethan laughed under his breath. "I would never go that far. The outpost likes to remind me who is really in charge." She considered that, her eyes holding a quiet glimmer. "Yet it listens to you." He pretended not to hear that part, turning instead toward the lift alcove. They walked together, the soft overhead lights reflecting faintly from her silver chest plate. The quiet between them held no tension now, only a calm understanding that had grown naturally during their hours in the lower deck. When they reached the lift, Ethan pressed the call button. The doors slid open with a gentle tone, warm air drifting out from the interior. Saria did not step in immediately. Instead, she looked at him with a composed, contemplative expression. "Ethan Hale," she began, "there is something I have not told you." Ethan paused. "What is it?" She held the scanner in both hands, almost as if offering it. "I am not simply an observer from my world. I am part of a lineage expected to show understanding between cultures. Every gesture I make carries meaning for others who will follow." Ethan blinked, surprised. "So you are important." "Not important," she corrected gently, "but symbolic. My actions speak for more than myself." Ethan leaned against the lift frame, letting that sink in. "Then your people are going to think highly of my outpost after tonight." Saria shook her head softly. "Not because of the outpost." Ethan felt something stir in his chest. "Then because of what?" Her gaze held his with calm certainty. "Because of you. Because you acted without hesitation for someone you did not know. That is not common among my people, or among many species." Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, unsure how to respond to such sincerity. "I just did what felt right. And that," Saria said, "is the rarity." Another subtle tremor hummed through the floor, gentle and brief. Ethan steadied himself out of habit, but Saria remained still, watching him instead of the walls around them. When the hum faded, she stepped a little closer, her voice low and steady. "Earlier, when you protected me, I believed it was a single moment of instinct. But after spending these hours with you, I understand something else." Ethan's breath caught. "What do you understand?" Saria's eyes softened, golden and warm under the lift lights. "That your instinct is your nature, and that nature is what saved me." She stepped into the lift slowly, her gaze never leaving his. Ethan hesitated for only a heartbeat before joining her, the doors closing with a soft, echoing sigh that felt like the beginning of something neither of them had expected. The lift rose with a smooth glide, the warm air inside settling around Ethan Hale and Saria like a calm breath held between moments. Neither spoke as the soft hum carried them upward, the lights overhead reflecting in faint gold across Saria's eyes. When the doors opened onto the visitor level, the corridor beyond was quieter than the lower decks, lit with a softer blue glow that marked the outpost's night cycle. Ethan stepped out first, checking that the floor felt stable. It did. The tremors had eased, leaving only a gentle hush in the air, as if the entire station had grown tired and finally surrendered to rest. Saria walked beside him, her posture composed yet thoughtful. "It feels peaceful here," she murmured. "Like the echoes of the earlier danger have faded." Ethan nodded. "They usually do. This outpost has a way of calming itself down." They moved toward the guest wing, where a row of rooms curved along the rounded corridor wall. Soft lights framed each doorway, creating a quiet rhythm of small golden halos. Saria paused near her assigned room, her hand resting lightly on the panel but not pressing it yet. Ethan slowed beside her. "You should get some rest," he said gently. "It has been a long night." She did not open the door. Instead, she turned toward him, her expression thoughtful, as though she was choosing her next words carefully. "Ethan Hale," she said softly, "you have done more than keep me safe." He frowned a little. "What do you mean?" "You showed me a kind of courage that is not taught in my world," she replied. "A courage that comes not from rank or expectation, but from instinct and heart." Ethan shifted his weight, unsure of how to respond to something that sounded so much larger than he felt. "I was just doing my job," he said. "Maybe," she answered. "But you performed it with a grace that spoke louder than any ceremony." She stepped closer, close enough that the soft blue lights cast a faint glow along the silver accents of her chest plate. "My people will ask what I learned from this visit," she continued. "They will expect words about technology, diplomacy, and structural study." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "And what are you going to tell them?" Saria held his gaze with steady warmth. "I will tell them I met someone who acted with honor before knowing who I was. Someone who treated me with gentleness when the world above us was shaking apart. Someone who listened." Ethan felt a quiet shift inside him, something deep and steady. "I did not do anything special," he said. Saria reached out, placing her palm against the back of his hand with deliberate, ceremonial clarity. Her skin was cool, her touch feather-light, but full of meaning. You did something rare, she corrected. You acted from the truth of who you are. For a moment, the corridor held its breath. Saria slowly withdrew her hand, then lowered her head in that same quiet gesture she had given him beneath the falling debris. But this time, the bow was deeper, slower, filled with recognition rather than shock. Ethan stood very still, feeling the weight of what the gesture meant. When she lifted her gaze, her eyes reflected the soft blue lights like still water catching starlight. Among my people, she said, this is given only once. To the one who has earned a place of trust. Ethan swallowed, the moment settling into him like a warm, unspoken vow. Saria, he said quietly, I do not know what to say to that. You do not need to, she replied. Your actions have already spoken. She stepped back toward her door, but before activating it, she looked at him one last time. Her voice was gentle, steady, wrapped in the calm of a night finally free of tremors. Rest well, Ethan Hale. The outpost stands because you stood first. The door slid open with a soft glow, and she vanished behind it, leaving the corridor in a stillness that felt full rather than empty. Ethan remained there for a long moment, listening to the quiet hum of the station. And as he finally turned to walk away, the walls around him seemed to exhale in relief, holding a silence that carried the echo of a truth larger than the night itself.